You'll see this amazing book here on the table, which we're going to tell you about in just a moment. But there is something a little different happening.
Well, every so often we get the privilege of having one of our Great Healing Wednesday guests in our studio live, and I mean live, not on Zoom screen live, like live, wow. And today is one of those times.
Absolutely. Joining us is Joe Hayne. Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all. I live very, very close, so when we were organizing all this, I Google mapped it, and 0.9 miles. I was like, it's meant to be. I'm going live in person.
It's amazing, right? So not only do we have a live in the studio guest, but folks, he walked into the studio, which is so amazing.
So what I want to do is let Monica tell you just a little bit more about him.
I would love to tell you all about Joe. Joe is a mindset and spiritual coach, author, and speaker. He is deeply passionate about helping others transform their lives by teaching them how to wield the power of their mind and spirit. Encouraged by his late wife to write a book, Joe began doing so as he continued traveling the world, healing, finding meaning, and learning, all while expanding his understanding of his own mind and spirit.
You're going to hear this title, Dreams of Antiquity, is the story he is meant to share with everybody, all of us, you and me. It's an epic tale of one man's soulful quest through many incarnations, learning to love again. Joe, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, this is a marvelous tale. What I look at, everything I've seen about you, the book and the whole thing, I know that many people have experienced loss. You seem to have taken that, and what I tell people, a light came on and something happened. So tell us all about it.
Thank you both. Well, it started all off with I was with a woman for many, many years, and things were kind of going good, but I was always looking outside of myself for that purpose, for that meaning. And then, life as it was seemed pretty normal. I was working a corporate job, but she was diagnosed, my wife at the time. We were married for about a year, and she got a diagnosis of cancer, and we were just blown away because she and I had a health and wellness business together. So just kind of like thriving in that space, but then you get this cancer diagnosis. And so our lives took a really, really abrupt shift. And it wasn't so bad at first, but then it got real, real bad, and a bunch of tumors spread to her brain. And we had to move in with my folks, and it was kind of like the all hands on deck kind of experience where everybody just had to step up. And I was bathing her, feeding her, caring for her while maintaining my corporate job. There was some beauty in that because everything that was like usually a concern before in my life, like the little stresses and bills and everything, all that was incinerated. So I started kind of seeing how my mind was functioning through the mortality always being like in question, because my anxiety and stress and everything started to build through that. And so I started kind of observing my mind and watching myself process that while trying to be like the most supremely supportive, compassionate, loving partner I possibly could. And it was really, really challenging because we were always having trips to the ER, tons of doctor visits, all the holistic and regular traditional treatment. And it just wears on you. It grinds on you. And every day you're wondering, like, are we going to get out of this? And so it was a really, really challenging place to be. But what was really beautiful too is like in a relationship, you have like little grievances kind of, and we were young love too. And so still developing, but all of those too get incinerated, and you really come down to the purity, like an undiluted version of your love. Because when you're facing death, all those other things, they don't matter anymore. So I had these just really huge extremes of like love and fear, always these two ends of the spectrum every single day. And we never really imagined that she would pass, but one day I was taking her to the ER again, and it was really, really scary. And it just all developed real fast, where they had to induce a coma. And she was like yelling in the room, very traumatic. I was there with my father in the ER room. And I knelt down beside her and I held her hands and we just said, I love you. And 3 days later, they told me that she's not in there anymore and that I had to make the conscious decision to pull her off life support. And, I called in my family, our friends, to come pay their last moments with her. And it's the typical scene where everyone's surrounding the hospital bed. And I just was pouring gratitude into her, and for hours just sat there like making my peace, and we said goodbye. And I was driving home with my folks in the back of their car, and I said to my dad, what time did she pass? And he goes, 3:25. I go, 3:25? And he's like, yes. And I go, that's our anniversary, March 25th. And that was the first significance, the first coincidence that was too coincidental. And I felt that that was her telling me it's okay. And that was her first sign. I didn't know really what it meant, but I know it meant something. And that was kind of the spark that initiated a very kind of epic, adventurous, tremendous, very anguished, but beautiful spiritual journey of my own. And from there, my entire world changed, because I wasn't just grieving the loss of this beautiful woman and who she was to me, this wife, this lover, this best friend, this business partner. I was also grieving me being that to her, is this husband, this business partner, this corporate guy, this lover, this best friend. So I realized that in one moment, in a breath, all of these identities that I had held like near and dear, and I was able to kind of express to society and family, like, look at me, I'm important, were just incinerated with her final breath. And that was my first revelation that identity is kind of a hoax. And it's just for us to feel good about ourselves. But where did that leave me? And that was the question that kind of sparked my quest. So I quit my corporate gig, had like 2 weeks left, and I decided I was going to buy a one-way ticket to Colombia and start traveling the world and volunteering. I felt like maybe I can help others and fill some kind of the void in my own self by helping others, because the anguish was extreme. It really came on hard and quick after it all kind of connected that she was gone. I remember having a dream where we were going through the hospital, and this actually happened in real life, and we were pushing the hospital bed, and she was really at the cusp of passing over. And it was really, really scary, ton of anxiety, but she was there with me, and we were racing through the hospital halls and the dim lighting, and it was all just a terror. And I remember waking up from that dream and like moving my hand to where she would lay in the bed, and it was cold. And then I remembered that she had passed. And in that moment, I longed for the nightmare, because at least she was there. And so that was kind of the revelation of how much I was anguished and terrorized by like the loss of somebody you love, something you love, and our entire lives that we built together and everything that was kind of awaiting for us on the horizon. And so I knew I needed to figure something out. I felt very much alone, but I wasn't. I received a text message on Jessica's phone, that's my late wife's name, and I didn't like disable the service. It was a few days after she had passed away, and it was a friend of hers, and she's like, hey honey, just checking in on you, how are things going? And I had to say, I'm so sorry to let you know, but Jess passed away a few days ago. And she's like, this is gonna sound very weird, but I'm a friend of Jessica's, but I'm also a spiritual medium. And I believe Jess is coming to me to speak with you. So my analytical mind, that masculine energy, was like, what do you want? This is a hoax. How can I help you? But my grieving heart was like, I'm all ears. Tell me, what is she saying? So she started telling me some stuff that she could not have known. And they were friends here in Chicago, where I was at the time. And then she said, well, the very first message that Jessica wants you to have is that she wants you to write a book. And that didn't make any sense to me. So I just go, okay, I'm going to shelf that for now. And then she wanted me to explore the afterlife. That was the second message, by reading certain books and doing some stuff. But I was already kind of planning to leave. So I said, this all makes a tremendous amount of sense, and I'm getting this encouragement from her and everything, and I'm going to stick to my path of that one-way ticket to Colombia. So a few weeks after, about a month or so, I left, and I was with a dear friend at the time, because my family thought I was ludicrous and nuts just quitting my life and going to travel the world. And I get it, but I was kind of running from the pain surrounding me, because everything I knew, everything I looked at, everything I saw and was familiar reminded me of her, and I needed to get away from that and try to go explore something. And if Jess was wherever she was communicating with me, I knew that meant something. I didn't know what, but I knew that if we kind of did a macro view and separated ourselves from the very intimate perspective, that I had to be here for a reason. And that's what I decided to go discover, is to go find. Why am I here? And where is she? How is she guiding me? And if she's doing real well, that means that I'm the main star of this movie now. And I need to go figure out what kind of movie I want to live, because it wasn't a very pretty one. It was really dark and very lonely and very scary for a while. And so I left. I started traveling the world, and all the time I was getting signs and encouragement from her. A lot of butterfly visitations, a lot of animals, and she would come through my dreams, and we would kind of hang out, and she would tell me messages and give me direction for the particular season I was navigating. So I made my way all through South America, and things got worse before they got better, because your mental and emotional, spiritual kind of prowess, these pillars of your existence, they start wearing thin. And then I got physically sick in Bolivia. You cannot look at a vegetable without getting sick in Bolivia, the water and everything. And so I was just not in a good space. And that's when I decided that I need a really big change. I couldn't keep moving from one country to the next and helping people and exploring, that I needed to get some security. And so I went back home for just a little bit, and I was always in touch with that spiritual medium. We became dear friends, and sometimes she would just reach out and give me a message. And one time I'm walking down the streets in Chicago. Nobody knows I'm home. It's like 0 degrees out, the windy city. The wind is whipping across. I feel like my ears are going to be blown off my head. And I'm meeting a dear friend for lunch. And I walk like 4 blocks, but I know that I'm moving to Costa Rica. Jess and I got married there, and there's a beautiful fondness for that country and everything to go in my heart. And so I wanted to go there and really begin my healing journey in one space. So I'm like, should I buy earmuffs? Like, I'm in Chicago, the wind is horrible, it's winter, but I'm going to be in 85-degree weather in 4 days. So I kind of chuckle about it, and I just keep on walking through the wind. I finally show up to the restaurant, I sit down, and I get a text message, and all it said was, Jessica told me to tell you to cover your ears. And so it's hilarious, because it's like, your wife is still there telling you the stupid stuff that a guy would forget. Yeah.
I immediately thought, who cares? You're going in 4 days. Your ears need it now.
Yeah, right.
Buy it, throw them away in 4 days' time.
Exactly.
I love that. But this is women's logic.
Exactly. So the guy's logic is not there. And it's just like, well, no, I need to be practical about
you need
this,
to be
right?
practical going in 4 days.
I'm with Joe.
Yeah.
I'm with Jessica. I'm like, no, your ears need them now.
So that day I went and got earmuffs.
Wonderful.
Right? So I listened, but it really highlighted to me the proximity of what it meant to be guided. And so I eventually did move to Costa Rica, and I really started developing a fondness for understanding the way my mind was perceiving my journey. And I started seeing a lot of what's called attachment, is that everything I was looking at was without Jess. A food I would try, a scene I would see, a horizon, a sunset I would catch, an experience I would take in. I'd always be like, I wish she was here. She would have loved this, that, and the other. And so my entire existence, I was kind of living this diluted version of the experience because I was in want and in desire, had attachment to it being other than what it was. And that was what I knew I needed to change. I needed to start realizing that I have to grasp with fullness and sincerity the fact that I was blessed to have had the time with her, and now to grasp that same kind of gratitude for who I am now and the journey where I find myself. It wasn't easy. And I started kind of saying, okay, well, I'm doing really good in Costa Rica, but I need more now. I'm back into the adventure thing. And so I was there for 4 months. I bought an old truck, an old Land Rover in Costa Rica, and decided I'm going to drive it back to Chicago. And everyone's like, you're going to die. You're nuts. You're crazy. I'm like, possibly, but maybe not. Maybe this is exactly what I need to do. And I really felt this encouragement to do that. And so I have this old truck that breaks down, with anybody just looking at it the wrong way. And it's a safari vehicle, and I'm taking it 10,000 miles across many, many countries. It was an epic adventure. And I met a lot of people, did a lot of growth, and developed even more in my meditation practice, my mindful awareness, and Jess was guiding me still every step of the way. And I'm sitting there one day, and it's pouring rain out, and it's about 4 a.m, and I have a 16-hour drive ahead of me. I'm in Mexico on the coast somewhere, and I couldn't drive my truck in the rain because it was like a leaky submarine. I mean, this thing, the water's pouring through the ceiling, the wipers can't work. It's hilarious, but I had to kind of wait it through. So I'm sitting there one morning, and I think of this idea for the book that she told me to write. And I think of the very first chapter and the very last chapter. And it was a eureka moment for me, where when I found myself in the car, I was driving like back and forth in the road, like, yes, this is it. Like, this is that magic, soulful story. And I eventually made it back to Chicago after many, many run-ins with some danger and a lot of adventure and broken down cars and meeting lots of awesome souls and experiences. But I went back, and I ended up moving to Italy for a little bit. And I lived on the Amalfi Coast. And I know how fortunate I am to have done what I did, but I gave up my corporate job and I started spending all of our savings. I knew that I'm not going to go buy a condo somewhere. I need to invest in my own healing. And this was it, because it was make or break, because there was a lot of times things got very sketchy and scary, and I was starting to kind of think these really bad things, and I knew I needed to pour everything into this investment. And for some reason, it meant travel and get away and find the things that work for me. So I started writing that book in Italy, and Dreams of Antiquity, the first chapters were born there. And yeah, so that's part of the beginnings of the spiritual quest. Many more adventures came after that.
What a journey. So what do you say to someone else now, because you've gone through that passage of deep transformation and change? How do you then help someone who is at that very raw moment where they're experiencing
So they don't have to buy
loss?
a truck.
Yeah.
And travel car across Costa Rica. That's always my first go-to, is to do the Land Rover thing, but it's not for everybody. I ask them how they want to feel. How do you want to feel today? And are you close to that? And usually the answer is no. Yeah. And then we explore what is preventing you from feeling like that. And it always dials down to their emotions, their thoughts, and eventually their beliefs, and what they believe about themselves, their life, and their experience. And those things don't align with how they want to feel. So we have to rewrite their beliefs and know that maybe there's an opportunity for them to consider that they can feel that way if they just change their beliefs and realize they're perfect as they are, and that their life is perfect if we look at it for what it is and not what it's missing in the same way that they do. So we kind of start from there and then build.
You mentioned a very important aspect for yourself, which we have seen in seminars when we used to travel on the road, and that is we get fixated on our identity or who we think we are. And if you remove that or take that away, we almost can't function. It's like you can take away my house, my job, anything, but don't take my identity.
Yes.
So can you talk us through your experience and then how you help others?
Sure. Well, identity, it's a bit of a hoax. Again, like when you graduate high school, when do you stop becoming a high school graduate? And when do you stop holding on to that identity? It's just a fixation for your ego to feel good about yourself, but it really doesn't exist. And there are good ways to kind of see identity and be like, this empowers my experience. This inspires my experience. And there's ways that give you anxiety and pressure and stress. So it all dials down to feeling. You can think and believe whatever you want about yourself and kind of latch on to an identity. But if it's not serving you and it's stealing away from your peace and your prosperity in life and that abundance, then you got to let it go. I eventually realized that all identities, they're kind of just little pep talks. They make me feel good about myself, or in a social setting where I can tell people I've done this and that and the other. I don't even like calling myself like a mindset spiritual coach because it just feels like inauthentic in a sense, but people need to know what you do. So use those words, but I don't let it define me. I just feel that I am this soul living a human experience. And when I think of a soul, I think of like beauty and love and light. And how can that have an identity? It's beyond identity. And when I think about that, all the normal stuff, the day-to-day stuff, the stresses, the bills and everything, they just kind of float away because souls don't worry about paying your electrical bill, And so that's what I latch onto, and it helps me, and that's what I help my clients do and speak about and everything, yeah.
Are you doing mostly one-on-one?
I do one-on-one mainly because to kind of get into this very intimate details, it's hard within group settings because people's beliefs and their trauma and everything, it's really hard to open up. I am looking into doing some group stuff, but eventually it's more of so like workshops and things like that. But for now, yeah, the one-on-one is where I think we make a lot of progress.
Are you still in contact with your medium?
Yes, yeah. She's still a dear friend of mine, yeah.
Right.
She lives in Mexico now.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we always just touch in, saying hi and everything.
And now that you've gone through this experience and emerged out the other side, empowered, and a greater understanding of how everything works, what has been some of the reactions from your family members that also loved Jess and have gone through their own trials of her loss?
I mean, they're very happy it turned out this way, right? Because for a while, me traveling through Mexico by myself, there's a lot of terror. Like, we lost Jess, and now Joe's doing this kind of insane things. So there was concern and worry, but, to see me latch onto the spiritual side of things and grow, they're very, very happy. They're very proud. And, writing this book for 7 years and everything too, to see it come to fruition and published and everything too. So they're very, very happy. And it wasn't the end of my story too with Jess is traveling around. It continued. I went to Tibet. I trekked through the Himalayas, went to India, Morocco, just continuing to kind of digest everything that I could culturally, but also like faith-based through the different countries. So they had a lot to kind of get through because I was always doing these crazy things. Like, I'm going to go trek the Himalayas for the next month. And they're like, you've never trekked before. I'm like, yeah, but I'll figure it out, And so they're very, very patient and supportive and amazing. I feel that I put them through the ringer a little bit, but I had to do that for my own sake so that I could be the better version that I am now.
Yeah,
But my mom had a lot of worrisome nights. So,
do you think your mom has read the book?
Yeah, she's reading it actually right now.
All right.
Yeah. People always tell me too when I talk to them, they're like, "Oh, I'm reading your book," or "I'm not reading your book," or "I'm going to read your book." I'm like, you don't always have to, update.
Yeah.
It's cool. I know you'll get to it.
What did it feel like when you finished it? As an author, I imagine.
Yeah, very surreal, and it's a series too. I do miss writing, but it's with me. It's going to be a 3-part probably series, so the other ones will come out. But just you kind of get into the self-publishing thing, and it becomes like the clerical work, and you're like, blah. But I love the writing. I'm very like interested in doing like a lot of deep kind of, I guess, explanation and creating the beauty through my words and everything. And I can tell you a little bit about the story too,
Yes,
but
please.
I do miss it terribly because it's like a soulful journey.
I think what actually, without even having read the book, but just getting a feel for you, your journey, the title Dreams of Antiquity, this is what we call the hero's journey, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And so the soul discovery is, I feel, encapsulated within the book. Would you expand
Totally wrong.
on that?
It's not it at all. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, that's like dialed in on point. I think we're done here. She did it. Yeah, it's. I guess any good story is a take on that, right? Mine is a little bit challenging in the beginning because it's basically a king and a queen in Babylonia. The queen is very sick, and the king is desperate to save her, and he cannot. And she passes, and he can't help live the life he's got, and he ends up passing away as well, only to reincarnate in another body. So the soul moves on, but the soul remembers his past life. And so he awakens in Aboriginal times as a village girl and learns through that life only to pass away again and move on to a soul and avatar in Egypt. And then learn from that and on, forth, just kind of like me traveling from one country to the next, learning about Buddhism and in Nepal and really having that help me. There's a chapter about a shepherd in Nepal who goes through and finds a sanctuary and this spiritual teacher, and then in China. And so it's the soul's reincarnation time and time again, and all the while, his late wife, the queen, is guiding him through dreams and signs and encouragement. And so it reflects my journey. It's fiction, though, so I can do things that I've learned through my spiritual journey that are my truths, and many others
you can
here.
teach through fiction.
Yes.
And it's easier.
And it's
And people
more
can comprehend it.
engaging
Much
because
more
we
engaging.
put ourselves into the
We
story.
know this.
Exactly.
Right.
If I just tell people you're a reincarnated soul over and over again, and you're like, okay, crazy person, but I say it through in fiction, they're like, wow, this is fascinating.
It will
Yes,
be.
and they can be part of it.
We have what would you say to an audience here just in passing?
Oh, okay.
Just in maybe that's the wrong word.
Lee, that's terrible. In passing.
Right. I'm dealing with a
transitioning.
very joyful soul here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as we, I would say, go to the next section of our program and end this section, what would you say to them?
Just to take a moment and realize all that you have in life and all that you are to others, and close your eyes, take a deep breath in, and think of that. And everything outside of that is just not welcome. And like allow yourself to really marinate in that feeling. It just allow it to wash over you and embrace you from within and out. And realize that you're incredibly special. You're exactly where you need to be right now, and you're here for a very important reason. And you don't have to have it all figured out. It's okay. Just realize those truths and try to anchor yourself into them every single day. And your experience will match that. It will start aligning with that beauty, that light, that radiance, and live that life. And it will be an abundant, beautiful experience.
Well, Joe, it's been absolutely delightful having you in our studio. And now that I know you're within walking distance, you're going to be coming and continuing this story with us over a cup of coffee every time we're in the studio.
Yes, we know where you guys tomorrow.
Because we know where you live. We know where you
live.
But if you did want to connect with Joe and take advantage of his consultations, you can find more information on his website, joe/Hayne.com.
Actually, it's dash.
Oh, yes, it is dash.
Don't say slash.
Dash,
that's the wrong
slash.
thing.
Oh, my goodness.
That's
So
all right.
Joe-Hayne, but I'm going to spell it Joe and Joe - Hayne is actually spelled Hayne. And what we're going to do now is take a 10-minute break, and then we'll see you all back here for the Circle of 12.